for joining. Hi.
Same with you. We're both wearing our hoop earrings and our hair's up in buns. And every time I see my tattoos, I'm always like, look, aren't they nice? Aren't they nice?
I just realized I'm still connected to my speaker. Hold on a second.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Hi, Mama. I see that you're online, but I don't think you're going to stay on. My mom's on.
Hi.
I don't think she's going to stay on.
No, that's okay.
She's always just like, oh, what is this? I've wandered into this room. What is this for?
So how are things? You look so nice. I love that green on you.
Thank you. Things are good. Things are good. I'm sorry. I like to watch us because I'm arrogant. I like to just see what is happening. Also, I feel like it actually gives me a more accurate view of who's watching. I don't trust this. It doesn't tell me who's on. And I like to know, because it's nice to say hi.
It is nice to say hi.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry about the noise. It was just I forgot that it was not on mute. But yeah.
Thanks everybody for joining Thursday Charla. It is about 10 after 8. I think we'll give it another minute, see who hops on, and then we'll kind of dive into it.
Yes. Today's is a toughie, to be honest. I don't know. I feel like we're going back into the tough, which I understand because obviously life has been hard. I don't know. You'd think that the pandemic would actually result in less horrible things happening in the world, but
did you see?
That's not the case. So I did see Gabriel, yeah. I was going to say hi to him, but I was like, no, don't let him be.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Tanya and I are also very excited because this Sunday, we're going to have our pop-up at the aviary. So it's pretty exciting as Tanya does her little jig. But yeah, so we're looking forward to it. We're putting the final details. Tanya's cooking up a storm because she actually knows how to cook. I'm basically offering a lot of emotional support. That's my contribution. But yeah, so we're pretty excited. We're looking forward to it because it's gonna be the first event, hopefully of many. Yeah. So any thoughts on that, Tanya?
My house is so hot right now. It is.
Oh, shoot. Yes, I bet.
So I talk about my house from time to time. I love my house. I live in this 100-year-old house. It was built in 1914, and it's just off of Alberta Ave. And so story has it, legend has it, that these original houses, they actually had to haul the lumber up from the river valley on a horse and carriage. And this house is great. It's so cute. I love it. But it's not without its drawbacks. So this house gets really, really cold in the wintertime. And it is so hot in the summertime. And it just makes me grouchy.
Yes.
Makes me feel some kind of way. So now I'm cooking and it just amplifies everything, and I don't have AC, and I'm just oh my God, if these are not the most delicious turkey sandwiches you've ever have no reason.
Will have all been for naught.
No, they for naught. All of the effort will have been for naught.
I get it because yeah. Yeah, I don't know what it is about summertime, but summertime I turn into an ice monster. All I want to eat is ice because I'm just who wants to eat when it's 1,000 degrees out? And granted, I'm from a tropical country, born and lived there for a few years, so you'd think that I would be adjusted to that kind of climate, and then I'm not. No, I was actually talking to a friend of mine who was saying it's because we've become privileged, we've lived in this country where there are things like air conditioning, so when you're uncomfortable you're just I don't like this. And I'm hey, that is a fair point, my friend. So I was touche. Yeah, we get it. Yeah, because it's hot in Guatemala and there's AC there, but still can't escape the heat.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at today. It's just really hot, and we're doing all the things, we're doing all the cooking, we're doing all that stuff. So you know, if I am not like sweating like a mad person tomorrow, then, you know.
I get it. Yeah, no, for
So
sure.
anyway, having said all of that, thank you to everybody for joining us on this week's Thursday Charla. We are super glad that you were able to join us. So this week we're talking about, obviously kind of top of mind for everybody, is this mass grave that was found at the residential school site in Kamloops. And, you know, one of the things that I really struggle with when we talk about, you know, when we make these like discoveries at residential schools, is that like Indigenous community members have been talking about this for a long time. And, you know, by and large, the response has been, you know, that they're sensationalizing it. You know, we disbelieve them. You know, we say, oh, you know, we acknowledge that there were some horrors, but it really feels like you're blowing this out of proportion. And this is a problem because we're continuing to discount the experience of survivors of residential schools. And so there had been whispers about, you know, the gravesite at this residential school in Kamloops that community members,
Sorry,
that community members had chosen to disbelieve.
Yeah.
And, you know, they've been told by authorities, you know, the Catholic Church was like, you know, we have no records of.
Ooh, yes, keep going. Like the more you talk, I'm like, yes.
We have no records of this gravesite, you know. Whereas now, you know, when we look at, like, now that there is like all of this overwhelming, I mean, like it's irrefutable evidence. We have literally found, you know, the gravesite, right? That kind of thing doesn't happen. It doesn't happen on such a massive scale without like a really elaborate attempt to cover it up, right? Without like a really elaborate plan to make sure that this does not come out into the open. And so, you know, on the one hand, it's validating for community members, for Indigenous community members to say, like, there is the proof. I told you that this had been happening, but like, it shouldn't need that.
No.
And validating isn't even necessarily the right word because it's not like, it's just like, oh, okay, like I wasn't, you know, I'm not crazy, you know, and you feel validating that way. It's literally like this.
It's dehumanizing.
It's dehumanizing.
Yeah.
And so it really feels top of mind for everybody. You know, we're not going to stop talking about this. And I feel like this is a topic that's been discussed at length, but it's really important that we keep talking about it because it's not resolved, right? And one of the issues is that so few of the TRC's like 90 recommendations, 94, thank you, recommendations for reconciliation have been implemented, right? Like it's embarrassing at this point. So it's really important that we keep pressuring legislators and the government, you know, legislators individually, but also like the government as a whole, and holding, you know, both them and ourselves to account for the lack of action, because, you know, we have the ability to ensure that, you know, as a collective, these recommendations are implemented. We have the ability to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
But it requires work and it requires an ongoing commitment to justice. And the problem is that we're all sitting pretty comfortably, and it's really difficult to continue doing this kind of advocacy, right? Mm-hmm. If you're not really committing and recommitting to justice, even when it's uncomfortable. So,
oh, froze for everyone else. You were frozen. I don't know if it was just for me or if it was for everyone, but I was like, oh, she looks really pretty, but she's frozen. So I don't know what you said. I'm so sorry. Can you repeat it? Do you remember what you were saying?
Yeah, just that we have to continue to like recommit to making justice is served, and we have to recommit to it even when it's uncomfortable. And the problem is that too many of us are sitting too comfortably, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to put in the work, and it's not good enough. It's not good enough. We can't like position ourselves as being righteous or good if we're not willing to do it, even when it's uncomfortable. So that's just kind of what I want to say.
For sure. No, and I completely agree with you. And it's funny, like so many things, like when you were talking, I was like, have a point. I have another point. And I just to like add to the things that you were saying, because like completely agree with everything that was said. You know, I recently like kind of house tattoos. They posted about like, oh, do you guys remember when like survivors of like residential school said that the Queen had taken people on a picnic and heard from again? And you know, somebody in their literal comments was like, that was like refuted by Reuters, and it's like, shut the fuck up. Like, do not start with this crap. Like, I understand that it is a scary thing to imagine that there are people who are this evil, but they exist. Like, that's the thing. There is documentation of what, you know, the monarchy has done, not only just in Canada to our Indigenous people, but, you know, to Africans, to Asians, to people in Australia. Like, it is not a thing that like we should be trying to refute and trying to explain. Like, no, let's just take these things at face value. These survivors are telling the story because these things were traumatizing to them. And when you tell people, oh, I don't believe you because that's sensationalist, or, you know, I think you're exaggerating, right there, you are re-traumatizing that person. So I think we really need to really not just start believing survivors of any kind of tragedy, you know, whether it's sexual or whatever, not just because, you know, it's dehumanizing, as you were saying earlier, Tanya, but also because you have no idea how hard it is to put yourself in that vulnerable position when you're actually bearing your heart, your soul to somebody, thinking, okay, this person's gonna this, I trust this person will believe me when I say these things, and you're met with disbelief, or you're met with, you know, a total refutal of like your entire story. So when you were saying that, I really wanted to point that out. And another brilliant point that you made was about the Catholic Church, and how the Catholic Church is like, we don't have those workers. And not only is that, you know, obviously disproven because they found, you know, these like poor little graves, but they've also, you know, like everybody likes to talk about how really cool, you know, Pope Francis is, and in comparison to like other popes, okay, he is more, you know, open and he's more scientific. However, he refuses to apologize for what happened here in Canada specifically. When he was asked to make an apology, he said that he didn't see the point. And when you consider that, you know, the ego of the Catholic Church, you know, it's $1 billion dynasty, you know, because it really is a dynasty. And for them to hoard all of this wealth and to hoard all of this pride, and, you know, not even have like the human courtesy to at least acknowledge that you've created, you know, these cycles of trauma for like people in the Americas, for people, you know, in Asia, for people in Africa and Australia, and like this complete disbelief. And it's just the disconnect that it takes to be that soberbio. How do you say soberbio in English?
So
Like soberbia, like I guess like arrogant, I guess. Like that's the only word that I can think of. And we don't
yeah.
have any others. Yeah. But anyway, it just, yeah. So I really wanted to make those points because fuck. As somebody who grew up Catholic, and you know, and it's embarrassing to even say this, but you know, still like believes in Jesus and Mary and all that stuff. It is really, it's an embarrassing time. Like it's definitely one of those things where it's like, I definitely have had to struggle with separating, you know, my faith, my own individual faith and practice with, you know, the church, because I cannot in good conscience, you know, support that that place or that organization. And, you know, it's funny because like they're always asking for money, and I'm always just like,
¿Para qué? Like, what do you?
like what for, you know? So anyway, that was my spiel. I
No,
definitely.
and that's fair. And you know, one of the things that really pissed me off about that Reuters like fact checking, that it's just it really really pissed me off, is that like I was reading the article, and you know, one of the things that they say is like they're breaking it down like point by point by point. Like the Queen did visit Canada. You know, in like on this year, they were in Kamloops in like 1959, like on their royal visit, you know, whatever. and they're like, there has been no evidence to like corroborate this like picnic, whatever. And so they're bringing it down point by point by point. But one of the things that they talk about that I felt like it was really, really dishonest is that they say like Justin Trudeau and other Canadian leaders have apologized for the schools, and compensation has been paid out to thousands of victims. And so it makes it sound like this is resolved. And it's like, no, victims are still fighting to have their like trauma recognized in court. And the Canadian government, like the federal government, is literally fighting these people in court. So we're talking about it like it's like all one and done, and it's not. And so the way that they position it is so infuriating. And people are like, oh, but that's been debunked. And it's just like, according to whom? Whose media debunked it?
And I'm
Like,
sorry, but
sorry.
didn't like Prince Harry just come out like saying all of these things in the royal family, and like the royal PR team is like, that is not true. So clearly there's a spin machine like in the works. So it's yeah.
It's like, okay, like this is the truth, but the truth according to whom, right? Like
Exactly.
writing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we should just move on from that point.
So no more talking about the queen, because the queen is the worst.
Antes que más me enfurece.
I know. No, and like honestly, like the queen, like the entire monarchy is just, all of them are disgusting. They're really, really gross. I really, you know, it's funny because like when the pandemic started and you know, people were starting to really get like upset because obviously like all the injustices that were happening in the world, and people kept like making, you know, mentioning like the French Revolution. I'm like, where was that plan? You know, can we go back to that? You know, we were all kind of planning it. We were all kind of joking about it. So like why can't we? You know, just I choose that one.
Well, like actually, I'm sure we can find guillotines online somewhere.
Right, we can make them. We know carpenters. You know, I can befriend a butcher who has like, I don't know. Sorry, this is, for all intents and purposes, this is a joke. Sorry, it stays online, Tanya. It stays online.
Nobody's
Anyway.
right? I just think a safe space.
What?
Anyway.
Anyway.
One of the things I want to talk about was
We also
how so many places in our city are named after these like racist ass people. And this is a problem. I mean, we're still talking about Grandin. So Grandin Fish and Chips yesterday was like, we are going to change our name, and we are going to like openly petition to have the neighborhood changed from Grandin to something that's not something that's Grandin.
Yeah.
But look, here's the thing. So many of our historical leaders, I mean, Jason Kenney was so close. He was like this close to getting it.
Oh, his point. It was so funny. I know. He's like, just a little further and we'll kind of agree with you. Like, we won't agree with everything else that you've said, but that point, yeah. Keep going.
Yeah,
sorry.
like, you know, so one of the things that he talks about is like
cancel culture.
How, like, you know, if we're gonna start canceling all of these like historical figures, right? You have to understand that, you know, they were products of their time, and so as much as they like did, you know, bad things, they also did these really good things. And it's just like, yeah, that's the point, is that, you know, they may have contributed in some way, and we can, you know, but it's also like, it's a really complicated history, and we have to acknowledge both sides of that. And also, like, the fact is that these people committed, like, are guilty of perpetuating all kinds of
genocide, like legit genocide. Like, that is the scary thing. Like, when you look back at, like, you know, like there's a really cool article, and I'm gonna try to share it later. Like, we'll put it in like the oh my goodness, in the description when we post the video. It was written by Progress Press, and the person was Duncan Kinney, and they basically break down all of like the 20 places in Edmonton that should be renamed. And it's a really, like, it's an old article from last year, but it really resonates even now because you know, like Tanya was saying, like Grandin LRT and Grandin Park and Grandin, like in general, like so many places in that neighborhood. Like, I live like a few, you know, steps away from Grandin, and it's just, it's infuriating to me because I'm like, this man literally, you know, like, I remember you posted the quote, and it's like, he argued about, you know, removing the Indian from the child, right? That was a quote that he said. I can't remember. And It's just like, when you read that, like, that is terrible. And again, you know, product of his time, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. He is no longer alive, and he did, you know, atrocious things in when he was alive. So like Tanya was saying, we need to move on and maybe find better idols, you know, find people that would, to quote Bailey Sarian, but we really need to move away from like all of these really horrible people, like the Fabulous Five. Those five women, and all the suffragettes, to be perfectly honest, most of the suffragettes that were part of the suffragette movement in the US and in the UK and here in Canada were really problematic people. But the Fabulous Five were particularly icky. And the fact that we have places named after them is really embarrassing, you know? So I mean, like, when you consider all of those places that have these really, you know, not even problematic, because I wouldn't even categorize it as problematic, because I think that they're actually damaging to still, you know, have these people on a pedestal. When you consider that, like, we really do need to make more of a push. And so I think another thing, because like luckily Don Iveson actually came forward saying that we needed to actively change the name of Grandin LRT station. It's like, okay, well, let's just change, you know, if we're going to start with Grandin, let's take it a step further. Let's go with Emily Park. Let's go with Oliver Square. Let's go with, you know, Greaseback. I sent you that one because when I was reading the article, I was like, oh my God, that guy's gross too. You know, like, there's so many disgusting humans that we, you know, still idolize, and we don't really want to acknowledge like they're problematic, or not even problematic. I keep using that word, but we don't want to acknowledge how vicious and violent they were in their time because of some small contribution that they'd made to society. And it's, you know, it's important to know the whole story. And like, I know I always think about that whenever I encounter people, like when people are being like their worst selves, and like they're using racist language, or they're being abusive for whatever reason, I always think like, this is probably a really low moment for them, but you can't really do that to a historical figure. You know, you can have that compassion, that empathy for a person in the here and the now, but you can't have that kind of understanding for somebody in their time. You know what I mean? At least that's my opinion. You look like you're pensive, so I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I still feel like, you know, even when you're at your lowest, I mean, if you're using like really racist and derogatory language, I'm just like,
no, because but at the same time, like, the reason that I feel at least partially some humanity for that person is because even though they're being gross, like, I don't know if you saw that, it was a TikTok where like this guy was at Holiday Inn, and like the woman had called him the N-word, and her daughter was like, sir, you have to understand, our grandma just died. And the guy was like, I understand, but like the Best Western is next door. And luckily, like, Holiday Inn was like really supportive. Beside the point that I'm trying to make is that, like, I agree with you. But the reason that I make allowances is that person can still change. They're not going to change in that moment, but true. They will hopefully change into or evolve into a better person. But my point is that, like, you can't refute that, like, you know, freaking John A. MacDonald turned into a better person. That when he was on his deathbed, he was like, be kinder to the Indigenous, you know, like, he never said those things. He died being a racist man, and we are still celebrating that racist person. You know, like, anyway, that's.
Yeah. And even if he had, I mean, the fact is that even if he had, and he had like repented in his last moment, the fact is that it doesn't undo all of the harm that he did. And that's how I feel about people now, is it's just like, you know, if you're going to be harmful, you know, no matter, your apologies don't undo the harm that you caused, right? You have to like work twice as hard to make up for how fucked up you've been, right?
Yeah, fair.
Because you have to like atone for your shit, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, the fact is that, like, you know, once these words have been spoken, you can't take them back. They exist in the universe now, right? Like, there's no coming back from that. And so at the same time, you know, does that mean that person, like, their humanity ends there? Like, no, right? And that's, you know, why I think, you know, it really is, like, we do have to exercise discretion when we're talking about things like cancel culture, right?
Oh, accountability culture is what I prefer to call it. You know, well, because really all you're asking is for that person to be accountable for, like, the things that they said in the past that were, you know, maybe transphobic, maybe homophobic, maybe all of the above. You know, like, if you're no longer that person, then maybe you can, you know, prove it in your current deeds. You know, and I think that that's all people are asking for. Like, people aren't, well, no, I can't say that, because there are people who are looking to put people's heads on a platter and on, you know, sticks. But I mean, I understand those people too, because it's you know, being a victim of like racism or transphobia or any of those really horrible things, it ruins your soul. It really does. And when you're talking about your self-esteem and your self-worth and how racism and your own self-perception, you know, is so tied into that, like it is really, really hard to reconcile when you with races for that reason. At least for me personally, I really can't speak to your experience, but that's always for me. So,
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's a really, really fair point. So I guess, you know, what we really wanted to just, you know, acknowledge was that there's still a lot of places in our own city that, you know, bear the names of these really harmful people that, you know, the fact is that the work that they did is inextricably linked to the reality that we live in today,
yeah,
right?
for sure.
And, you know, includes the communities that were built for, you know, all of their, you know, wonderful points for us, right? You know, the, you know, parks that we get to enjoy, the green spaces, that kind of thing. But also, like, we can't really, it would be dishonest to ignore all of the harm that was caused in order to build this city, right? And who really benefited. And so we'll be linking to that article from
Progress Press.
Yes, we'll be linking to that.
I was going to call them Press Progress. I don't know why, but in my head, that it sounds better in my head, and I'm like, that's not their name.
Because there is like an Instagram account called Press Progress.
I think you're right. Yes.
Yeah, there is an Instagram account.
Yeah. But yeah, no, we'll link to that because like it's not just about yeah, there's a lot of icky people but there's a few parks that you should all support. Beaver Hills Park, great name, great place, has mutual aid on Thursdays from 1 to 4, 26 outreach. And then there's also Mary Burley Park, just off of Chinatown. Really beautiful park, nestled, you know, really nicely between, you know, the bridge and, you know, it's kind of like close to the police station, which is the only bad thing in my opinion about it. But really great park, named after, you know, this wonderful woman who did a whole bunch for like Edmonton community, and she was a Black, you know, person. So I mean, those are places that we should, you know. Also mutual aid happens there every Sunday from 11 to 4 from the Prairie Sage Protectors. So, you know, those are two places that like I can speak to at least about, you know, I like going to them. I visit them. I live quite close to Beaver Park Hills. So for me, that is why I like there. Emily Murphy, not so good. Harlide Park, not so good. There's a whole bunch of them. And like Tanya said, we're going to just link them in the description so you guys can check them out.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah. And finally, anybody who hasn't heard, our pop-up is on Saturday at the Aviary, and you can show up between 4 and 7 p.m. for Salvadoran Salpanes con Pavo, which are turkey sandwiches, but they're not just turkey sandwiches. I think
they're fancy turkey sandwiches.
They're the finest, fanciest.
Yeah. you have like the fancy buns too. Like
we're up on some papos secos, courtesy of Handy Bakery. Thank you so much to Handy Bakery for supplying us with those. And I'm so excited, and I've been like busy getting everything ready. So please come. 100% of the proceeds from the food will be donated to Prairie Sage Protectors to help fund their mutual aid projects. And any of the merch that you purchase on Saturday will help fund our community endeavors as well. So if you're interested in some swag, you can pre-order some of our enamel pins. We'll have limited edition t-shirts up for sale and some vital stickers. Make sure that you grab those. And just come down and say hi. You can make it with Prairie Sage Protectors while you're there. You can also make a donation anytime. They are always accepting donations, so we'll make sure that we link to that as well. Thank you to everybody who tuned in to this week's Thursday Charla. Marce, anything to add?
Yes, I did. As you were talking, I was like, oh, I need to make mention of that. We do accept cash, but we prefer e-transfers or PayPal on Saturday. And another thing, you said it, and I can't remember it because, of course, my brain is like a gnat. So I forgot whatever I was going to say, but if I remember, we will put it in the description. So thank you very much for tuning in. Tanya, it was lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
Everyone, you guys have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.